happy to introduce you to this channel dedicated to regional geography. Today's video is a special video as it is the first Anglophone one on this channel, making it officially bilingual. In a few words, the first series of videos will focus on French regions, and today's topic is the first one in alphabetical order, Alsace. So, let's begin. Alsace is situated in the northeast corner of France. It is bordering the German Bundeslands of Baden-Württemberg to the east and Rhineland-Pfalz to the north, the Swiss cantons of Basel, Saalven and Jura to the south, and the French regions of Lorraine and Franche-Comté to the west. Its small size of only 2,280 square kilometers doesn't reflect a large population of more than 2 million, including 250,000 in Strasbourg, 7th largest city in France. The other major towns are Mulhouse, Colmar, Haguenau, Molsheim, Célestat, Wissembourg, Thann, Obernai and Ribeauvillé. The main rivers are the Rhine, which serves as the border with Germany, the Ile, from which the name Alsace comes, and the Lauter. To understand Alsace geology, we need to explain some basics about plate tectonics. I probably wouldn't surprise you if I say that Earth's surface is divided into mobile sections called tectonic plates. So what do those plates consist in? Well, to keep it simple, this is a sketch of the first kilometers of the Earth. To begin with, this is the crust, varying between 7 kilometers for the oceanic one to 30 kilometers for the continental one. Then comes the upper mantle, divided into two sections, a 100 kilometers deep lithosphere and a more ductile asthenosphere comprising of the rest of it. Some complementary details: the border between the crust and the upper mantle is called the moho, the one between the lithosphere and the asthenosphere, VLVZ, and concerning minerals, the oceanic crust mainly consists in basalt and gabbro, the continental one of gneiss and granite, and the lithosphere of peridotite. Anyway, let's go back to our topic. Tectonic plates consist of the crust plus the lithosphere, and their displacement is caused by mantle convection movements. Mantle convection designates movement of hard materials along the mantle, more or less like a conveyor belt. Finally, concerning plate borders, there are three different types depending on if the plates move towards, away or along each other. So, all that to say that Alsace is a graben. A graben? What is that? Well, a graben is a structure occurring when two tectonic plates roll away from each other. So it's a divergent type of border, marking the division of a plate into two new ones. An ocean will eventually form with time, as well as an oceanic rift, forming oceanic crust. Yeah, you heard me right. Alsace should have looked like this. So, what happened? The Vosges and the Black Forest in Germany were once part of the same mountain range. The Rhine Trench was formed during Oligocene and Miocene, which are just there. Hard materials ascending from the mantle applied opposite tensions, causing the division of the plate. Also note that some of the magma supplied volcanoes in the mountain range. Where the division occurred, the range collapsed into sections separated by normal faults, forming sort of stairs, the actual graben. Just in case, this is a normal fault and this is a reverse fault. Those sections should have formed the continental margins during the formation of the new ocean, but the whole process was stopped during the formation of the Alps. Alsace can be divided in several natural areas. The Vosges mountain range, subdivided between the Vosges subhills, the Vosges forest and the Haute-Chaume, the Alsace lowland, divided between the agricultural lands and the Ried, the River Rhine and its forests, the Alsace-Bossu, which is part of the Lorraine Plateau, and the Sungau region. Vosges forest covers a large part of the mountains, so much actually that it is the second largest forest area in France, after the land forest in the southwestern part of the country. In terms of composition, under 600 meters of altitude stands a grove of sessile oaks. Between 600 and 1000 meters, we found the beech as well as the symbol of Vosges forest, the fir. Finally, over 100 meters and right to 102,000 stands a beech stand forest. Obviously, other plants can be found around, such as maples, whitewood rushes, and wood fescues. As for the animal kingdom, the forest is home to deers, lynxes, coltids, capercailles, salamanders, or nutcrackers. Over 1,200 meters, on the ridges and highest peaks called ballons, the forest gives way to windy moors, the Haute Chaume. It's in this area that quaternary glacial lakes and mares are found. The Haute Chaume are home to plants such as the yellow gentian or the mountain pansy, and it's also there where the Vosgian cow comes to graze. The milk of this cow is used to make the local cheese, the Münster. Stuck between the mountains and the lowlands, the calcareous composition and sunny climate make the Subvosgian hills a perfect area for viticulture. The area produces famous wines such as the Pinot Gris and the Riesling. Most of the lowlands are used for agricultural purposes, producing wine of course, but also wheat or hop. In some places, however, fields give way to reed, humid prairie extents regularly flooded by rivers. The most famous one is the Grand Ried, situated between the Rhine and the Ill, and extending from south of Strasbourg to north of Colmar. Typical animals are phalodes, rhodes, Eurasian curlews, voles, and Alsace's iconic animal, the white stork. The main plants are willows and poplars, but the reed also shelters plants that are rare if not unique in France, such as the gladiolus or the Siberian iris. The Rhine, majestuous and powerful river, an inspiration for many poets. (1,233 kilometers long), it takes source at the Thome Lake in Switzerland, which is here, and crosses 7 countries before flowing into the North Sea at the Rhine Delta in the Netherlands, which is there. As the river is one of the most important in Europe in terms of traffic and the economic heart of the region, it underwent a lot of replanning. But it is still possible to find some untouched sections of the particularly lush Rhine forest. It shelters bear's garlic, clematis, ivy, but also European tree frogs and Eurasian beavers. Alsace-Bossu designates the hilly piece of Alsace forming a bump in the northwest. Despite being Lorraine in terms of geology and linguistics, the area has been attached to Alsace for religious reasons, being Protestant in a Catholic Moselle. We won't cover much more today due to its proximity to Lorraine, but we will in a future video. Situated in the southern tip of the region, the Sundgau stands out from the lowlands by its landscape of hills and rivers. Formed from a compartment relatively well preserved of the Rhine collapse, it is actually an incision zone, where rivers dig valleys into a soft sedimentary rock, in that case, marl. Finally, in the southernmost part of the region, lies a small part of the Jura Mountains, with the Glaserberg as highest peak. We begin our history in 58 BC, when Alsace becomes Gallo-Roman after the defeat of the Germanic leader Ariovistus at the Battle of Vosges. It was during this period that wine was introduced and the camp of Argentorum founded in 12 BC, which would become Strasbourg. In 407, a Germanic tribe called the Alemanni invaded the territory and brought their language with them, Alemannic. In 496, the Frankish conquest enabled the expansion of Christianity, mainly by constructing abbeys, such as the Abbey of Murbach, founded in 727. In 870, thanks to the Masons Treaty, Alsace became part of East Francia, also known as Germania, which would become the Holy Roman Empire in 962. From the middle of the 12th century to the middle of the 13th century, Alsace was under the control of the House of Hohenstaufen, the most famous one being Frederick Barbarossa. This era marks the apex of Romanesque art in the region. The Hohenstaufen reigns took end in 1254, and Alsace rapidly split in numerous counties. This period is also marked by a strong urbanization and the introduction of Gothic art, with the Cathedral of Strasbourg as an icon. During the Renaissance era, Alsace turned into a European center of arts, printing and humanism. It even converted to Protestantism during the 16th century, under the impulse of theologians such as Martin Bucer. The region enters in the bosom of France in 1648, with the Treaty of Westphalia, which concludes the 30 Years' War. War that, by the way, established France's domination in Europe. Alsace wasn't entirely annexed, however. Indeed, France would continue its expansion piece by piece, notably Strasbourg in 1697 by the Treaty of Ryswick. The 18th century would slowly introduce bilingualism, and would also see a great population growth as well as a industrialization onset, with the opening of the first fabric printing factory in Mulhouse in 1746. So comes the French Revolution, from which Alsace embraced the principles, despite some eventual tensions, especially due to the prohibition of the local dialect. It is also during those times, in 1792, that Mulhouse, the last bit of Alsace not to be French, was finally annexed. Alsace would so cross the revolutionary and Napoleonic periods with major events such as the coup d'état of 1801, which I would cover later. We are now in the 19th century, as Alsace became one of the most important industrial regions in the world. Industry transformed cities such as Mulhouse, and the first railway between Mulhouse and Thann opened in 1839. The region specialized in mechanics, with the example of André Koechlin's locomotive construction workshop, ancestor of today's Alstom. And the Koechlin family is only one of the great names of the Alsatian industrial bourgeoisie, which also includes the de Dietrich or the de Turckheim, for instance. But there comes the major event of the Franco-Prussian War, which led to the annexation of Alsace and the neighboring department of Moselle by the Treaty of Frankfurt in 1871. Only the Belfort territory would remain part of France and would be so attached to the Franche-Comté region. Those annexed territories would form the imperial territory of Alsace-Lorraine of the newly formed German Empire. As a result, for 40 years, Alsace would be the bone of contention between France and Germany, as well as a factor of World War I. Around 1,028,000 habitants, designation of the Alsatian and Lorraines who decided to keep their French nationality, left the region, while at the same time, thousands of Germans immigrated to the land. Germany's public opinion saw Alsatians as lost brothers, but in reality, the locals were attached to France, and sometimes even anti-German for some, such as the famous author Annecy. This situation would of course cause some tensions, such as the Zeeben affair. Germans did contribute to modernize some cities, however, and they also brought some advances, such as the Bismarck's social security. But you probably guess how this period finished. During World War I, the region would become the theatre of the Vosges front, and the population would undergo mistrust from both sides. Alsace-Lorraine would be taken back by France in 1919, but would be reannexed by Germany 20 years later during World War II. A result of this reannexation were the malgré nous, local men conscripted in the Wehrmacht. The aftermath of World War II was marked by the Franco-German reconciliation and the European construction, reflected by the European Court in Strasbourg or the Strasbourg-Kiel Bridge. In terms of linguistics, Alsace is surprisingly diverse. We can divide the languages in two groups, local languages and imported languages, as well as two language families, Romance and Germanic. We'll start with Germanic languages, and with Alsatian, shown in green. Alsatian is a Low Alemannic German dialect, Alemannic itself being a dialectal area of South Germanophony. If you are confused, well, you have to know that the German linguistic area is divided into several dialectal groups, themselves being divided into many more dialects. Those groups are Low German, Middle German and High German. We can clearly see here that Alsace is being crossed by High German and a bit of Middle German. If we look at the dialects forming High German, Alemannic is just here, including Alsatian, and you have probably spotted other Alemannic dialects here and here. In southern Alsace, the Sundgau, we found Upper Alemannic, more or less the same spoken in Switzerland. The dialect spoken in Wissembourg is quite apart, as it is not High German, neither Middle German, but more like a transitional dialect between the two. It is called Southern Franconian, Franconian being a Middle German dialectal area covering West Germany, Luxembourg, parts of France, of Belgium and of the Netherlands. To end with Germanic languages, we found another Franconian dialect in Alsace-Bossu, Rhine-Franconian. Let's now talk about the Romance languages. There are two of them in Alsace. There's Lorraine, locally known as Welsh, spoken in the Welsh valleys of the Vosges, and Franc-Comtois, spoken in some villages in the south. Both of those languages are part of the Wal languages, the northern France Romance dialects, including French. Let's finish by briefly talking about imported languages. Those languages are French and German. As Alsace is a French region, French is obviously the language of everyday life, but it is important to note that Alsatian is a thriving regional language with 700,000 speakers, making it the second or third language in France. As for German, a lot of Alsatians can speak it for obvious historical, economical and cultural links. Alsace is multi-confessional, home of Catholics, Protestants and Jews. Judaism is recorded in the region since the year 1000. Alas, this long presence would be punctuated with tragic moments, such as the Black Death persecutions. Protestantism was introduced during the 16th century by theologians such as already mentioned Martin Bucer. Unlike the rest of France, Alsace as well as the neighbouring department of Moselle still apply the Kuhkondat put in place by Napoleon in 1801. Indeed, this last one wasn't abolished by the 1905 law on separation of the churches and the state, the region being, well, you know. The Kuhkondat was kept after the return to France, due to the promise of French authorities to respect local customs. As a result today, religion is still taught in schools, and the ministers of four religions are still remunerated by the state. Lastly, Alsace has a tradition of shared churches, or simultaneum, which are churches used by both Catholics and Protestants. When we think about Alsatian traditional architecture, the image of colourful, half-timbered houses immediately pops into mind. These are called well, I don't know, this thing here. As you see, I haven't studied Alsatian as a foreign language, so I apologize for all mispronunciations. So, Alsatian houses are part of a set including barns and a yard, but we will focus on the house itself. The houses are made of a wooden structure filled with clay, called lehme or winkelbode. The clay is held into place with wooden panels called flashvarik and coated with colored lime. Traditional roofing consists in scale-shaped tiles called Bieberschwanz. An important element of a framework is the symbolism given to wood. The beams disposed in a K shape form the man, which is supposed to evoke the silhouette of a man and symbolizes virility and strength. There are obviously other shapes given to wood, as shown in this little inventory. Let's begin the inside now with the ground floor. On the ground floor we find the vestibule, User, the main living room, Großstube, with a cast iron stove, the Plätteofen, or a terracotta stove, the Kirchelofen. The Großstube is bordered by an alcove with beds, the Alkuf. The kitchen, Küche, equipped with a sink, Wasserstein, and a partly exterior oven. A storeroom, Kammerle, and finally the grandparents' room, the Kleinstube. Most of the first floor is used as bedrooms, called Kamere, but there's also a smoking room above the kitchen, the Räucherkammerle. Finally, the roof rafters, roof which by the way is traditionally built with a flap called Valme, serve as attic, but also as drying rooms, especially in the hop-producing regions. Notice that this is a standard description, as variation exists depending on the location, the materials, the epoch, and so on. In this part, I'm going to expose the style that form the architectural traditions of the region. Romanesque art. Present between the 11th and 30th centuries, it exists under many forms. The most common one is the Latin cross floor plan, such as in Marmoutier, Murbach or Rosheim. But also very important are the Carolingian orthogonal floor plan found in Odmarsheim and the Ottonian transept found in Eschau. Gothic. It abruptly appeared between 1225 and 1230. Most buildings are Rhineland Gothic, which is a version of Gothic largely inspired by the Rhine-Roman plan. Notable buildings are Strasbourg's Cathedral and St. Theobald's Collegiate Church in town. Renaissance. Renaissance arrived in Alsace in 1535 and ended with the 30 Years' War. It is characterized by the maintenance of traditional house plans, but adding full of decoration and details, such as pinions, volutes, sculptures, or aureoles. We can mention the Maison des Têtes in Colmar or the Metzig. 18th century. Nineteenth century. Twelfth and 21st centuries. As any land during feudal times, Alsace has been covered with castles and fortresses. The most famous ones are Ortenbourg and Hohenkönigsburg, this last one having been restored by German Kaiser Wilhelm II. Later, when the region became the crossroads between French and German influences during the reign of Louis XIV, the well-known military engineer Vauban constructed numerous strongholds. Strasbourg's fortifications, Célestat, Fort Louis, and most importantly Neuf-Brisach, built in 1697, and considered as his masterpiece. And by the way, Vauban's famous apprentice, Cormontaigne, was born in Strasbourg. The following centuries, notably the First and Second Empires, would see great steps forward for military construction. But the most significant one was done by the Germans during the annexation. In addition to the renovation of pre-existing fortifications, Germans would begin the construction of new detached fortifications in the Vosges border areas. The first ones were from the von Biele type, but it quickly became obsolete during the explosive shell crisis between 1883 and 1885 and was so replaced by the new Festen network, such as the fort of Mutzig. Those last ones would inspire the Maginot Line, built a few years later and last fortification project in the region. How can we talk about culture without mentioning food? Exactly, we can't. And let me tell you that Alsace isn't lacking in these terms. It is not limited to the unavoidable Flammenkost and Choucroute, which by the way means acid cabbage. Alsatian gastronomy also includes Bäckhofer, a pork and potato stew, Knacks, Spätzle, Pretzel, Kugelhof, beers, wines and schnapps. Concerning craft, the region is known for its great glass making, notably in Kaiserberg, and its traditional pottery. Finally, Alsatian musical traditions were largely impacted by Albert Schweitzer, doctor, clergyman, theologian, philosopher, and also obviously musician, specialist of organs. Concerning popular music, there's Blasmusik, played by a 15 to 30 wind instrument orchestra during rural festivities, Stubenmusik, which translates to tavern music, and Guggenmusik, inspired by Switzerland, played during carnivals. Well, this is the end of the video. There are still so many things I could talk about, but I suppose I have to finish one day. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe. And so, see you next time.